to move himself up in our top 10 quarterback rankings. Kyle McCord from Syracuse. We'll discuss this and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot, for being our everydayers. And you know I got to kick the intro to Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at TheTalentCode. Keep talk to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champion, and the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, man. Every listen is greatly appreciated here over at Locked On NFL Draft. DP, today's show, we're going with our classic Monday show, updating QB rankings, right? Where does Cam Ward fall with the loss to Syracuse? Carson Beck, right? Are we putting the blame on him? Jalen Milroe getting the job done with his legs in the Iron Bowl? We're going to talk about where these QB rankings are going, and then we're going to our classic segments, money makers and bag fumblers, right? And then we're going to wrap this thing up with a appearance. We're hopping in the locker room with appearance, and we're going to talk about Coach K, Coach DP are going to hand out their game balls from the best performances of this past weekend, 2025 NFL Draft. Let's get into this conversation for the quarterbacks, DP.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. All right, guys, if you're new here, we go over top 10 quarterback rankings every single week. And, well, week 14 was it for the regular season of college football. So let's see how this ranking is shaked out for the top 10. Number 1, Miami quarterback Cam Ward. Number 2, Colorado's Shedeur Sanders. At number 3, Georgia's Carson Beck. Number 4, Jalen Milroe out of Alabama. At number 5, a new face in the top 5, Kyle McCord from Syracuse. At number 6, Garrett Nussmeier from LSU. At 7, Drew Aller from Penn State. At number 8, Quinn Ewers from Texas. At 9, Jackson Dart from Ole Miss. And at number 10, Dylan Gabriel from Oregon. Keith, where do we want to start here? I got to talk about Kyle McCord, man. And we see this we talk about this multiple times in the show. With the NFL, experience matters a lot to these teams, right? Now you got some teams that want guys with super high ceilings. Some teams want the younger guys. That's why they take them. Like, man, he hasn't reached his peak yet. We haven't even seen him hit or plateau just yet. While some of the older guys, the seniors, they feel like, you know what, this guy's plateaued. I watched Kyle McCord just deliver on time, in rhythm passes, down in and down out against Miami's defense. And honestly, on the season, Kyle McCord has played really good ball for the most part. He just plays at Syracuse, and nobody's really tapped into Syracuse. They were like one of the top teams of the ACC. They were going to the ACC championship game, maybe. But even then, people aren't really watching SMU like that. You know what I mean? They're not the big name like a Clemson, a Florida State, a Miami, where as soon as people hear that school's name, they're watching you. I'm watching Kyle McCord just play efficient football. He did have, I think, the game against Pittsburgh where he had multiple interceptions. I think like 5 in that one game. And I blame the coach for not pulling him out. But Miami didn't have an answer for him. And what I like the Syracuse, the trust that they have. And I think the quote from the summer was their head coach said in the press conference during practice or whatever, after practice, tell Ohio State thank you. Now, Ohio State's probably wishing we probably should have stood pat, but nonetheless, because it didn't go well for them this past week. But with Kyle McCord, man, he's playing on time, on rhythm. They went empty a good couple times in this game, giving him reads and just pro options. Right, you got LaQuint Allen in the slot lined up. That's a running back, and I'll talk about him at a later date. He's not coming out this year, I doubt it, but this dude's one of the best in the country. But they got him lined up in the slot. They go straight empty, and he's allowed to read the full field and pick the poison. How are we going to defeat this coverage on this play? And he's just doing it. He's playing with so much confidence, knowledge, intelligence, and IQ. I think at the end of the day, with his body type, he's got a good arm, right? Like he doesn't have an elite arm, but he has a good arm. I think his arm is better than Quinn Ewers. You know what I mean? In terms of being able to drive throws and put it in the tight windows. I think with Kyle McCord, man, he's putting himself with that, not just with that performance, but all season. We'll see if he plays in the bowl game. Hopefully he does. And hopefully he gets an invite to like the Senior Bowl of Shrine to really like stamp himself. I think he's kind of moving himself into that back end of day 2 type of situation for a team that might have a older quarterback. Say, you know what? Let's take a flyer on the guy on day 2.
Yeah, DP, I think what Kyle McCord did this weekend, in tandem with Ohio State did this weekend, right? I think what happened was he's getting people to say, hey, maybe instead of Ohio State having a Kyle McCord problem, maybe Ohio State had an Ohio State problem, right? And maybe Kyle McCord had an Ohio State problem, meaning that like he wasn't the issue, right? It was some things that were structurally in place that was hindering him from being a better quarterback, right? And so I think that from the results of this past weekend, people are going to go second guess, and it's going to make them want to go jump into the film, right? Because like, hey, y'all said this Will Howard guy was supposed to be the truth, right? And then that's not happening. It looks like there are issues. Now, it's not the same offensive coordinator, right? But could it structurally be different things in place? Because, I mean, you look at Quinshon Judkins, right, in the tail off. Trevion Henderson failing to hit his ceiling. So I think it's interesting from that opponent. DP, can you pull the QB rankings back up? And I look at it, and I want to – you mentioned his name, Quinn Ewers, that performance. What do you take from that? Because I think that it was a lot, DP. It was a lot going on in that situation.
It's watching that game. I mean, he had like a 26-yard run that I was like, oh, this, because they came into the game saying he had like a high ankle sprain. And then I saw him, get out of a sack, took off up the sideline. And I was like, well, he looks healthy to me. He looks like there's no ankle sprain to me. Like he looks fine. The thing that bothers me with Quinn, Texas has way too many weapons. They have way too many weapons for the passing offense to be as lackluster as it is week in and week out. Right? Like when you think about Ryan Wingo, Matthew Golden, Isaiah Bond, like all these Gunnar Helms at tight end, all these weapons that they have, even they got a couple other guys on their team, and you're just like, man, like this, I mean, they're loaded. Like, you know what I mean? And I just wonder, that's why for me, like some Texas fans might see this and like, how you guys have like a Drew Aller or some of these other guys over Quinn Ewers. I'm like, I feel like those guys, if put in that offense, would run it so much better. There'll be more and bigger, more explosive plays. There'll be more opportunities for big plays as well. And I just look at Quinn and I just wonder, I'm gonna be honest with you, Keith, I just wonder if Quinn Ewers is a game manager type quarterback. Now, most people, Keith, like they be like, hey, that's fine. And don't get me wrong, it depends on the situation. That's cool. If you go to San Fran, you can be Brock Purdy 2.0 where you don't have to carry the load. But how we talked about last year with trucks, trailers, hitches, I think we're gonna bring that back. You know what I mean? This draft cycle with these quarterbacks, I don't view Quinn Ewers as a truck. I don't. I feel like he holds that offense back more than anything.
Yeah, it's difficult because you get the flash plays like that play he had. I think it was to the running back Jaden Blue in the back corner. And you like, that was a hell of a play, right? Like that was a really good football play. And then you see, and I think even in a Florida game, he had some really good throws. But then in A&M, I think it's been a minor, like that's been a reflection of Quinn Ewers this season, where it seems like at times I feel like he's almost pressing too much, right? You talk about an experienced quarterback because we've seen him play higher level football, like at a more consistent level. It's just now, like you say, you don't know if it's the injuries. You don't know if them invoking the whole Arch Manning situation, right? It's kind of having to deal with it mentally and trying to figure that thing out. But yeah, I just think it's an interesting situation. I think with Quinn, I was thinking about it yesterday, like, man, where do I fall with this guy, right? Is this a second, third, fourth round prospect, right? Like, where do I go with this? Because
does he even declare? Like, because he still has a year of eligibility. Does he go back? But not go back to Texas.
Yeah, he ain't going back to Texas.
He's not going back to Texas.
That's over with, DP.
Yeah, it's Arch Manning's job after this season is over.
When Arch ran that touchdown and then the whole sideline got up, you knew what
you scored 17 points and 7 of them came because of Arch. You know what I mean, in the red zone. So I think it's tough, Keith, because the reason why I struggle with Quinn is because how that to me, the way that game was going, Texas defense playing as well as they were earlier in that game, keeping pretty much the whole game, right? Texas A&M scored 7 points, and I'm pretty sure that 7 came on a pick 6. So it's like the Texas defense did their job. I felt like that offense should have put up 35, 40 points.
Yeah, no,
the way that game was going.
Yeah, it should have been a 40-0 type football game, but they had 2 turnovers, both by Quinn. Yeah, both by Quinn. Because one was the pick 6, and then which the ball was deflected, right? The defensive lineman deflected it, and it took some of the speed off of it. And then the other one was the fumble with him running, and the DB kind of reached around and punched it out. So we'll see, DP, but I think it's going to make for an interesting conversation coming down the stretch, right? This 2025 NFL draft class. But DP, on to the next one. What we have, money makers and bag fumblers. Man, we're going to talk about the guys that made themselves some money this weekend and which guys fumbled the bag and lost themselves some money. Let's get into this conversation coming up next.
Hey, Locked On NFL Draft fans, I know you're like me and your holiday shopping list is, let's just say, far from complete. Well, if that's the case, I've got the perfect gift for the passionate sports fans in your life. Perhaps you've heard of IceShaker. IceShaker is now officially licensed with the NFL, NHL, NBA, NCAA, and MLB, and will make the ideal gift. Created by and used by the Gronkowski brothers, IceShakers has sold over 1 million bottles. They have changed the game with workout bottles, and this is the gift you've been looking for. Go to IceShaker.com and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to save 25% on your order. Order your team branded bottles today at IceShaker.com and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for 25% off your order. IceShakers, show your support for your teams with the best branded workout bottles on the market. IceShakers. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Guys, it's December, and that means it depends on where you live. It's cold. And how are some of the ways that you like to spend your cozy time in December? I know for me, man, it's just relaxing with my family, trying to stay warm, watching Christmas movies, things of that nature. It's the time and the season for it. But how do you stay cozy? I know some people, they wrap up in the blanket with a mug of hot chocolate, right? Hot cocoa, and they just vibe. They just relax. Therapy is a great way to bring yourself some comfort that never goes away, even when the seasons change. Guys, listen, therapy allows you, because I can speak from experience, it's helped me be the best version of myself. It can do the same for you. So if you think about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Just visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. Money makers and bag fumblers after week 14, the close of the regular season of college football, Keith. And for those who are new, that's stock up, stock down. Keith, I got to go to the Syracuse. I got to stick with that Syracuse game. We talked about Kyle McCord and what he was able to do and how he played. Jackson Meeks, man, like this young man balled out. 11 targets, 7 catches, 110 yards. And they just found a mismatch in that game. They found what they felt like, hey, this is what we want to attack in this game, and we're not going to stop. Every time Kyle McCord, that's why I said playing from the neck up, like Jackson Meeks, 6'2", 210, senior wide receiver, and crazy enough, Keith, he spent 3 years at Georgia. This is a former Georgia recruit. He was on Georgia's team for 3 years, and this is his actual breakout season and everything. He plays mostly on the outside. And every time that Kyle McCord saw him lined up one-on-one, Kyle McCord said, I'm giving my guy a shot. I'm giving you the opportunity to make a play. And whether it was the way that he used his footwork, his route stems, playing the ball at the catch point, right? Being a big, strong, and physical receiver and having the good speed as well to stretch and stress the DBs vertically. I think they found a matchup in this game with him on, I think, a freshman. I don't know why Miami ended up having a freshman in the game. I can't remember. I don't know if somebody got hurt or whatever the case may be. But having that freshman in there it was food for Syracuse. Because once they identified that matchup, they kept going back to it, man. And for me, I think with Jackson Meeks, again, in this wide receiver class, where you're just trying to make like you want to prove. Do you want to continue to stamp yourself? I think he has like almost 1,000 yards on the season. If he plays in the bowl game, he's going to eclipse 1,000 yards on the season. And granted, it'll be his only season of like real production. So it's going to be looking back at the history. What happened? Why didn't it work out in Georgia? Well, Georgia doesn't throw a lot to their wide receivers when Stetson Bennett was there. It was all the tight ends and run game. We saw Adonai Mitchell transfer up out of there. He went to Texas. You know what I mean? Like we saw Jermaine Burton dip. Like he was like, yeah, this is not an offense for wide receivers, not while the quarterback that they had at the time. So it'll be pre-draft interviews going to be big for him. But when you're, again, 6'2", 210, good speed, leaping ability, body control, hand-eye coordination, and ball skills, somebody's going to look at you like, man, we need an outside receiver. We need that X, that Z, that guy that can play on the boundary one-on-one. And Jackson Meeks proved that he can do that pretty much all season, but especially in this game in Week 14 against a Miami secondary.
Yeah, I like that call out, DP, especially a big-time game, right? Making the big-time plays and big-time moments. And it was just crazy because you're sitting there like, man, can Syracuse beat them, right? But you see guys like Jackson Meeks just consistently made plays when they needed to. We just finished talking about the Texas defense, DP, and there's two guys. I obviously had to write the reports on them this summer, and they're kind of under the radar guys for me. One, Vernon Broughton, the interior defensive lineman from Texas. I think he made himself some money, right? And he has high-level plays mixed in there, even when I watch his film. But I think him displaying that on a big platform like that is going to get the rest of the draft community kind of talking about him, which is, really good athlete, over 300 pounds, can move well. You talk about them losing Tavondre Sweat and what is my guy that went to the
Byron Murphy.
Byron Murphy, yes. And Tavondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, they lost both of them, but now you have a combination of Vernon Broughton and then the other guy I'm about to bring up, Barron Sorrell. I like this kid, DP. When I watched him over the summer, I believe I gave him a high to mid third round grade. And just as far as the edge rush, he's just somebody nobody talks about, but you're talking about a high activity, high impact, IQ, right? Good IQ type of football player. That's what he is. So when I was watching the game, I was actually kind of happy to see him make a couple plays in front of everybody, because I'm like, this is a guy that's flying under the radar, but he plays fairly good football overall.
Yeah. No, for sure. You know what I mean? He's definitely somebody we talked about in the summer, and his tape was good. You know what I mean? A guy that can get off the ball, bend around the edge, really stress the outside shoulder tackles. And again, and this is a good pass rush, or edge rush group. And anytime you have good performances in big games, and I think with Texas now next week, hey, take over the game next week. We'll talk about that, later on this week with the SEC championship game. Take that game over and really stamp yourself as one of the better edge rushers in this class. But I like those two calls, Keith. Arkansas didn't win the game, and it was a physical back and forth game, and in the snow. I didn't expect that, honestly, until when I turned it on. But Arkansas star wide receiver, and Keith, it's crazy to think about, Arkansas's receiver Andrew Armstrong leads the SEC in receiving yards in 2024. And in this game, like I said, it was a snow game against Missouri on the road. 13 targets, 9 catches, 128 yards receiving, and he did it in a variety of ways. Lined up at the X, lined up at the Z. He worked to get him. They got him the quick game, like the manufactured touches, just a quick wide receiver screen on the outside, and let him be strong, let him be physical, get yards after the catch, making guys miss, but also just the route running, understanding like, hey, I can't do what I would normally do in terms of route running, because the ground is full of snow, and I got to make sure I chop my feet the right way so I don't slip, things of that nature. But I know what spot I'm getting to. I know where I'm going, and I know how I can get there and how I can push the DB off the spot. Because if anybody knows, like if you watch the DBs in those snow games, those guys are worried, man, because they're like, listen, I don't know where this route's going. I'm trying to be very patient and controlled in my movement so I don't lose. And for him, man, he did it in such a multiple amount of ways, work in the middle of the field, 10, 15-yard in cuts and dig routes, mesh concept. He just made plays for this offense. Again, they lost by, I think, 6. I think Brady Cook had a 30-yard touchdown run that gave them the lead and everything in a very contested game. But senior wide receiver had a breakout season this year. He's been balling all season, especially for a team that likes to run the ball too. And the fact that he's leading the SEC of all conferences in receiving yards, big time season for him. And just like Jackson Meeks, Andrew Armstrong is another six. He's listed at 6'4", 202. So he's a tall, long-armed, athletic young man. And I just think that, again, if he can get an invite to one of these all-star events and then go to the combine and rip and run and do your thing, you can find yourself being selected as a potential wide receiver 3 with upside to be more for an NFL offense.
Yeah, no, and I think that these are the type of guys that's gonna make this draft class fun, right? Because they're gonna be able to mix and match. Like, okay, who feels like they're third rounders, who feels like they're fifth rounders, who wants to be aggressive right and say, hey, you got a high weight speed guy, let's go ahead and project them into the second round, right? And I think that's what's gonna pass. We always talk about this, right? Past the top 3 guys. The shuffling of the deck is going to be crazy as far as how people have them ranking. I think it's going to make it fun. But DP, let's keep this thing going and flowing. Hope you got your coaching whistle, DP. I hope you got your coaching hat, man. We're about to have some fun. Pull out the game balls, hop into the locker room. We're passing out game balls to these weekends' top performers that help their team win games. We'll talk about that coming up next.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place bets on the NFL live, all in one place. So when you get a hunch or an urge in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. All you need to do is just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Again, you'll get started with $150 back in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Again, to get in on the action, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Some of the other things that I love about Game Time, guys, is that they show the views for all the seats in the venue, so before you buy your ticket, you know what vantage point you and your party will have. They have lowest price guarantees, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and more. Guys, I'm telling you, you don't want to miss out on this. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Again, guys, you don't want to miss out on a deal like this. Just download Game Time today, because what time is it? It's game time. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Sorry for being our everydayers. My game ball of the week, Keith, it goes to Stanford edge rusher David Bailey. So let's say I believe 6'3", 6'4", 240 pounds. This young man had himself a great game. They played San Diego State and San Jose State, I'm sorry. And it was a game that I believe they won 34-31. And in this game, he was so impactful. 5 total pressures, two QB hits, a sack, and a forced fumble. And the reason why for me he gets the game ball, because against San Jose State, that forced fumble went for a touchdown. He stripped the quarterback. I think they were inside their own 20 to 15. Got the sack, stripped the ball out of the quarterback's hand. I think he might have been the one to recover it. But in that game, they had no answer for him rushing the passer. They had no answer. His pass rush win rate was around 26, a little over 25.5%. But on true drop back sets, his pass rush win rate jumped from 25.5% to 50%. He was winning pretty much almost half of his reps against that offensive line. And again, in the pass rush group, which I think he's got one more year left. He's a true junior, 6'3", 240, and first step quickness, strength, good hand usage, but also bend, right? He throws a ghost punch, dips around, tackles, arms. He can drop and sink his hips and work around the arc. Like, I don't know if he's going to come out. I don't know if he's going to leave college football yet. He might wait and come back for another year. But if he did, I think this could be a day 2 pick because he's had a good season. And again, to be able to, in a close game, you make an impact play that resulted in points. Yeah, David Bailey, man, he's my game ball pick of the week.
I like that, DP. DP for mine, I think I'm gonna go with the obvious, man. Travis Hunter, right? You talking about ending off your collegiate career. Did it the right way. You talking about you look at it, and not only I'm handing him the game ball, I might be walking up to him and just handing him the Heisman Trophy too, right? Like, here, go ahead, polish that thing off. Get ready, it's all yours, DP. Last game at home, right? He went 10 catches for 116 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's a hell of a day for a wide receiver. Then he went and had a similar day for a defensive back, a tackle, 2 pass deflections, and an interception. That's a hell of a day for a cornerback, right? And to be able to do both of those last game, right? You have no choice but to just give him the game ball. And we talked about this before, that he's a two-way player that you take him away and you start to wonder, where does Colorado get their playmaking from, right? Because they funnel the offense through him. And then also on defense, he's their playmaker, right? He might lead the team in interceptions and just big time plays. So definitely, like I said, taking the layup is easy, but I think he deserves the shout out for it, for the way that he finished off his, collegiate career. Don't know if they're gonna play in a bowl game or whatever that may be, but if that's his last game in a Colorado uniform in college, period, he went off the right way, DP.
No, I mean, him, Shador, like they're program changers. They changed the way this program looks.
Yep.
Helping Coach Prime like have probably one of the more successful seasons in Colorado history. And what does that then turn into? They're flipping 4- and 5-star recruits from other Power 4 programs and bringing them in, right? Getting the 4-star quarterback. I think Julian Lewis, I think is the young man's name. Getting him over there to pass the torch to him after Shador Sanders goes to the NFL this year. And even the key, you bring up the two pass breakups, they might have been situations where, like, not even might have been, he almost had interceptions on those. Like, he jumped them. Like, it just was the fact that the receiver was able to wrestle it away from his hands and the ball just hit the ground. But he jumped both of those routes. And I'm just like, listen, man, like, to do what he does, like, and no disrespect to Ashton Genty, but to do what Travis Hunter is able to do. I don't believe he's given up 100 yards all season in coverage. And he's got multiple interceptions. He's got like 4 games of 100 yards receiving and an interception. Like, you know what I mean? And it's just the stuff he's doing, we have never really seen before from a guy playing this amount of snaps and being as an impact player to that level. Yeah, if he doesn't play another snap in a Colorado uniform, he goes down as one of the best Buffaloes in history.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And he just, I think that when you look at it right in totality, is that this was just the Travis Hunter year. You know what I'm saying? Like he consistently made plays throughout the year. And even when people were like, you're hesitant to want to give him the Heisman, or you get into the conversation of, what position he's going to play in the NFL. Well, just take a second and let's digest him, like being in college, right? And being a two-way player in the plays that he's able to make, right? Both offensively and defensively, and just appreciate it, right? And be like, man, this may be a once-in-a-lifetime situation. Who knows? Maybe he starts a trend. Maybe we look back 5 years from now and we could say one thing, that he was a once-in-a-lifetime type player, or we say that, hey, this is the guy that pivoted college football, right? And how recruits wanted to be recruited. He can go both ways with it, and I think it's going to be interesting to see. But I do think it's fun to acknowledge what he's done this year, and especially this past weekend. I think they had the blowout win over Oklahoma State, like 52-0 or something like that. So they came with it on their mind, and they did what they had 100%. To do. Yeah, it was by far. But DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, man. Every listen is greatly appreciated here over at Locked On NFL Draft. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. And you can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot, for being our everydays. On tomorrow's episode, we have prospect spot week, not prospect spotlight, prospect perfect pairings. Perfect prospect pairings. We're going to pair a prospect to an NFL team. We got Dame's dudes as well. And I have I think you're going to like it, Keith. A draft storyline, I think you're going to like it. It's right up your alley. Something you talked about, a player you've talked about a couple of times. So we're going to talk about that on tomorrow's show. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.